ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaste, dear friends. Today I am going to give one video on self-inquiry, Vicharasangraham of Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi, edited by Dr. T.M.P. Mahadevan. So I will start from the introduction. The present work in prose consists of 40 questions with answers covering the entire range of spiritual disciplines required for the gaining of release, moksha. The questioner was Gambhiram Sesaya, one of the early devotees of Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi. He was a municipal overseer at Tiruvannamalai about 1900. Besides being an ardent Rama Bhakta, worshipper of Rama, he was interested in the study and practice of yoga. He used to read Swami Vivekananda's lectures on the different yogas as also an English translation of the Rama Gita for resolving the difficulties which he came across while studying these books and in his spiritual practices. He approached Bhagwan Sri Ramana from time to time. Bhagwan, who was only 21 years old, was then living in Virupaksha cave on Arunachala hill. As he was keeping silent at the time, not because of any vow taken, but because he was not inclined to talk, he wrote out his answer to Sesaya's questions on bits of paper. These writings over the period 1900 to 1902 were later copied in notebook by Sesaya. The material thus gathered was published by Sri Ramanasramam under the Little Vicharasangraham, which literally means a compendium of self-inquiry. A digest of the teaching contained in this work was later printed in English bearing the title Self-Inquiry. In that English version, the questions were omitted and the substance of Bhagwan's teaching was given, classifying it in 12 short chapters with appropriate headings. The present English translation is of the entire original text Vicharasangraham as it is in Tamil. The Vicharasangraham has unique value in the sense that it constitutes the first set of instructions given by Bhagwan in his own handwriting. A careful study of the instruction given by Bhagwan here will reveal that they are based on his own plenary experiences as confirmed by the sacred text which were brought to his notice by the early devotees and which he perused for the purpose of clearing the doubts that arose in the minds of the devotees. In the course of his instructions, Bhagwan makes use of such expressions as the scriptures declare, thus say the sages, etc. He also cites passages from texts like the Bhagavad Gita and Viveka Chudamani, and once he mentions by the name Ribhu Gita. But it is quite clear that these citations are offered only as confirmation of the truth discovered by Bhagwan himself in his own experiences. The basic teaching is that of Advaita Vedanta, the plenary experience of the non-dual self is the goal. Inquiry into the nature of the self is the means. When the mind identifies the self with the not self, the body, etc., there is bondage. When this wrong identification is removed through the inquiry, who am I, there is release. Thus, self-inquiry is the direct path taught by Bhagwan Ramana. The I experience is common to all. Of all thoughts, the I thought is the first to arise. What one has to do is to inquire into the source of the I thought. This is the reverse process of what ordinarily happens in the life of the mind. The mind inquires into the constitution and source of everything else, which on examination will be found to be its own projection. It does not reflect on itself and trace itself to its source. Self-discovery can be achieved by giving the mind an inward turn. This is not to be confused with the in- introspection of which the psychologists speak. Self inquiry is not the mind's inspection of its own contents. It is tracing the mind first mode, the I thought, to its source, which is the self. When there is proper and persistent inquiry, the I thought also ceases, and there is the wordless illumination of the form I, which is the pure consciousness. This is release, freedom from bondage. The method by which this is accomplished, as has been shown in inquiry, which in Vedanta is termed jnana, knowledge, true devotion, bhakti, meditation, dhyana, and concentration yoga are identical herewith, as Bhagwan makes it perfectly clear not to forget the plenary self-experience is real devotion, mind control, knowledge, and all other austerities. In the language of devotion, the final goal may be described as the resolution of the mind in its source, which is God, the Self. In that of technical yoga, it may be described as the dissolution of the mind in the heart lotus. These are only different ways of expressing the same truth. The path of self-inquiry is found difficult by those who have not acquired the necessary competence for it. The mind should first be rendered pure and one-pointed. This is done through meditation, etc. So the various paths in their secondary sense are auxiliaries to the direct path, which is self-inquiry. In this context, Bhagwan refers to three grades of aspirants: the highest, the medium, and the lowest. For the highest type of aspirants, the path prescribed is Vedanta inquiry. Through this path, the mind becomes quiescent in the self and finally ceases to be, leaving the pure self experience untarnished and resplendent. The path for the medium is meditation on the self. Meditation consists in directing a continuous flow of mind towards the same object. There are several modes of meditation. The best mode is that which is of the form I am the self. This mode eventually culminates in self-realization. For the lowest grade of aspirants, the discipline that is useful in breath control, which in turn results in mind control. Bhagwan explains the difference between Jnana Yoga, path of knowledge, and Dhyana Yoga, path of meditation. Thus, Jnana is like subduing a self-willed bull by coaxing it with the help of a sheaf of green grass, while Dhyana is like controlling it by using force. Just as there are 8 limbs for Dhyana Yoga, there are 8 for Jnana Yoga. The limbs of the latter are more proximate to the final stage than those of the former. For instance, while the pranayama of technical yoga consists in regulating and restraining breath, the pranayama that is a limb of jnana relates to rejecting the name and form world, which non-real, and realizing the real, which is existence, consciousness, bliss. Realization of the self can be gained in this very life. In fact, self-realization is not something which is to be gained afresh. We are already the self. The self alone is. It is ignorance that makes us imagine that we have not realized the self. When this ignorance is removed through self-knowledge, we realize our eternal self-nature. One who has gained this realization is called a Jivan Mukta, liberated while living. To others he may appear to continue tenant a body. For the benefit of those others, it is stated that the body will continue so long as the residue of the prarabdha karma, that karma of the past which has begun to fructify in the shape of the present body, lasts, and that when the momentum is spent, the body will fall and the Jivan Mukta will become a Videha Mukta. But from the standpoint of the absolute truth, there is no difference in mukti. What needs to be understood is that mukti or release is the inalienable nature of the self. This in substance is Bhagwan Sri Ramana's teachings in the Vicharasangraham. The earliest edition of this work in question-answer form I have come across is dated 1930, published by A. Sivalinga Mudaliar and V. Subramanya Achari, and printed at Sarvana Baba Press, Madras. This bears a foreword by Muruganar, which is dated June 16, 1930. It is mentioned in the foreword that it was Natananda that edited the work in question-answer form. In his preface, Natananda observed that the work contains the teachings given in writing by Bhagwan Ramana to Gambhiram Sesaya in the works in Tamil in its early editions, published by the Ashramam. In the third edition, published in 1940, as well as in subsequent editions, the self-inquiry appears in the form of digest. In the footnote that occurs at the end of publisher's note, it is stated that the manuscript copy given by Gambhiram Sesaya's brother was edited by Shiv Prakasham Pillai and was put into question-answer form by Natananda. Now starts the actual text, self-inquiry, Vicharasangraham of Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi. Invocation. Is there any way of adoring the Supreme which is all except by abiding firmly as that? Disciple. Master, what is the means to gain the state of eternal bliss ever devoid of misery? Master, apart from the statement in the Veda that whenever there is body there is misery, this is also the direct experience of all people. Therefore, one should inquire into one's true nature, which is ever bodiless, and one should remain as such. This is the means to gaining that state. Disciple, what is meant by saying that one should inquire into one's true nature and understand it? Maharshi, experiences such as I went, I came, I was, I did come naturally to everyone. From these experiences, does it not appear that the consciousness I is the subject of those various acts? Inquiry into the true nature of that consciousness and remaining as oneself is the way to understand through inquiry one's true nature. How is one to inquire who am I? Maharshi, actions such as going and coming belong only to the body, and so when one says, I went, I came, it amounts to saying that the body is I. But can the body be said to be the consciousness I, since the body was not before it was born? It made up of 5 elements, is non-existent in the state of deep sleep and becomes a corpse when dead. Can this body, which is inert like a log of wood, be said to be shine as I? Therefore, the I consciousness which at first arises in respect of the body is referred to variously as self-conceit, tarbodham, egoity, ahankara, nescience, avidya, Maya, impurity, mala, and individual soul jiva. Can we remain without inquiring into this? Is it not for our redemption through inquiry that all the scriptures declare that the destruction of self-conceit is release mukti? Therefore, making the corpse body remains as a corpse and not even uttering the word I. One should inquire keenly thus. Now, what is that rise as I? Then there would shine in the heart a kind of wordless illumination of the form I. That is, there would shine of its own accord the pure consciousness which is unlimited and one, the limited and the many thoughts having disappeared. If one remains quiescent without abandoning these experiences, the egoity, the individual sense of the form I am, the body will be totally destroyed, and at the end the final thought, viz. The I form also will be quenched like the fire that burns camphor. The great sages and scriptures declare that this alone is released. Disciple, when one inquires into the root of all self-conceit, which is of the form I, all sorts of different thoughts without number seem to rise, and not any separate I thought. Maharshi, whether the nominative case, which is the first case, appears or not, the sentences in which the other cases appear have as their basis the first case. Similarly, all the thoughts that appear in the heart have as their basis the egoity, which is the first mental mode I, the cognition of the form I am the body. Thus, it is the rise of egoity that is the cause and source of the rise of all other thoughts. Therefore, if the self-conceit of the form of egoity, which is the root of the illusory tree of samsara bondage consisting of transmigration, is destroyed, all other thoughts will perish completely like an uprooted tree. Whatever thoughts arise as obstacle to one's sadhana, spiritual discipline, the mind should not be allowed to go in their direction, but should be made to rest in one's self, which is the Atma. One should remain as witness to whatever happens, adopting the attitude, let whatever strange things happen, let us see. This should be one's practice. In other words, one should not identify oneself with appearances. One should never relinquish one's self. This is the proper means for destruction of the mind, manonasa, which is of the nature of seeing the body as self and which is the cause of all the aforesaid obstacles. This method, which easily destroys egoity, deserves to be called devotion, bhakti, meditation, dhyana, concentration, yoga, and knowledge, jnana, because God remains of the nature of the self, shining as I in the heart, because the scriptures declare that thought itself is bondage. The best discipline is to stay the heart in the heart, because the scripture declare that thought itself is bondage. The best discipline is to stay quiescent without ever forgetting Him, God the Self. After resolving in Him the mind which is of the form of the I thought, no matter by what means, this is the concluding teaching of the scripture. Devotee, is inquiry only the means for removal of the false belief of the selfhood in the gross body, or is it also the means for removal of the false belief of selfhood in the subtle and causal bodies? Maharshi, it is on the gross body that the other bodies subsist. In the false belief of the form I am the body are included all the three bodies consisting of the five seats, and destruction of the false belief of selfhood in the gross body is itself the destruction of the false belief of selfhood in the other bodies. So inquiry is the means to removal of the false belief of the selfhood in all the three bodies. Devotee, While there are different modifications of the internal organ, viz. Manas, reflection, buddhi, intellect, chitta, memory, and ahankara, egoity, how can it be said that the distraction of the mind alone is released? Maharshi, in the books explaining the nature of the mind, it is thus stated: the mind is formed by the concretion of the subtle portion of the food we eat. It grows with the passions such as attachment and aversion, desire and anger, being the aggregate of mind, intellect, memory, and egoity. It receives the collective singular name mind. The characteristics that it bears are thinking, determining, etc. Since it is an object of consciousness, the self, it is what is seen inert. Even though inert, it appears as if conscious because of association with the consciousness, like a red hot iron ball. It is limited, non eternal, partite, and changing like wax, gold, candle, etc. It is of the nature of all elements of phenomenal existence. Its lotus is the heart lotus, even as the loci of the sense of sight, its etc. are the eyes, etc. It is the adjunct of the individual soul thinking of an object. It transforms itself into a mode, and along with the knowledge that it is in the brain, it flows through the five sense channels, gets joined to objects by brain that is associated with knowledge, and thus knows and experiences objects and gains satisfaction. That substance is the mind, even as one and the same person is called by different names according to the different functions he performs, so also one and the same mind is called by different names: mind, intellect, memory, and egoity, on account of the difference in the modes and not because of any real difference. The mind itself is of the form of all, that is, of soul, God, and world. When it becomes the form of the self through knowledge, there is release, which is of the nature of Brahma. This is the teaching. Devotee, if these four, mind, intellect, memory, and egoity, are one and the same, why are separate locations mentioned for them? Maharshi, it is true that the throat is stated to be the location of the mind, the face or the heart of the intellect, the navel of the memory, and the heart or sarvanga of the egoity, though differently stated thus, yet for the aggregate of these, that is the mind or internal organ, the location is the heart alone. This is conclusively declared in the scripture. Devotee, why is it said that only the mind, which is the internal organ, shines as the form of all, that is, of soul, God, and world? Maharshi, as instruments for knowing the objects, the sense organs are outside, and so they are called outer senses, and the mind is called the inner sense because it is inside. But the distinction between inner and outer is only with reference to the body. In truth, there is neither inner or outer. The mind's nature is to remain pure like ether. What is referred to as the heart or the mind is the allocation of elements of phenomenal existence that appear as inner and outer. So there is no doubt that all phenomena consisting of names and forms are of the nature of mind alone. All that appear outside are in reality inside and not outside. It is in order to teach this that in the Vedas also all have been described as of the nature of the heart. What is called the heart is no other than Brahma. Devotee, how can it be said that the heart is no other than Brahma? Maharshi, although the self enjoys its experiences in the states of waking, dream, and deep sleep, residing respectively in the eyes, throat, and heart. In reality, however, it never leaves its principal seat, the heart. In the heart lotus, which is of the nature of all, in other words, in the mind ether, the light of that self in the form I shines. As it shines thus in everybody, this very self is referred to as the witness, Sakti, and transcendent Turiya, literally the fourth, the eye-less supreme Brahman which shines in all bodies as interior to the light in the form I, is the self-ether or knowledge ether. That alone is the absolute reality. This is the super transcendent Turiya Tita. Therefore, it is stated that what is called the heart, no other than Brahma. Moreover, for the reason that Brahma shines in the hearts of all souls as the self, the name heart is given to Brahma. The meaning of the word Hirdam, which splits thus Hirit Ayam, is in that Brahma. The adequate evidence for the fact that Brahma, which shines as the self, resides in the hearts of all, that all people indicate themselves by pointing to the chest when saying I. If the entire universe is the form of mind, then does it not follow that the universe is an illusion? If that be the case, why is the creation of the universe mentioned in the Vedas? Maharshi, there is no doubt whatever that the universe is the merest illusion. The principal purport of the Veda is to make known the true Brahma. After showing the apparent universe to be false, it is for this purpose that the Vedas admit the creation of the world and not for any other reason. In the hearts of all individual soul, that which shines in Brahma and hence is called the heart, Brahma Gita. Moreover, for the less qualified person, creation is taught, and that is phased evolution of Prakriti, primal nature, Mahat Tattva, the great intellect, Tanmatras, the subtle essences, Bhutas, the gross elements, the world, the body, etc., from Brahma, while for more qualified, simultaneous, induced by the defect of not knowing oneself as the self. Thus, from the fact that creation of the world has been described in different ways, it is clear that the purport of the Vedas rests only in teaching the true nature of Brahma. After showing somehow or other the illusory nature of the universe, that the world is illusory, everyone can directly know in the state of realization which is in the form of experience of one's bliss nature. Disciple, devotee, is self-experience possible for the mind whose nature is constant change? Maharshi, since Sattva Guna, the constituents of the Prakriti which makes for purity, intelligence, etc., is the nature of mind, and since the mind is pure and undefiled like ether, what is called mind is in truth of the nature of knowledge. When it stays in that natural, that is pure state, it has not even the name mind. It is only the erroneous knowledge which mistakes one for another, that is called mind. What was originally the pure sattva mind of the nature of pure knowledge forgets its knowledge nature on account of nescience, gets transformed into the world under the influence of tamo guna, that is the constituent of prakriti which makes for dullness, inertness, etc. Being under the influence of rajoguna, that is the constituent of prakriti which makes for activity, passions, etc. Imagines I am the body, etc. The world is real. It acquires the consequent merit and demerit through attachment, aversion, etc., and through the residual impressions, vasanas. Therefore, attains birth and death. But the mind which has got rid of its defilement, sin, through action and without attachment, performed in many past lives, listens to the teachings of Scripture. from a true guru, reflects on its meaning and meditates in order to gain the natural state of mental mood of the form of the self, that is, of the form I am Brahma, which is the result of the continued contemplation of Brahma. Thus will be removed the mind's transformation into the world in the aspect of Tamoguna, and its roving there in the respect of Rajoguna. When this removal takes place, the mind becomes subtle and unmoving. It is only by the mind that is impure and is under the influence of Rajas and Tamas, and reality, that is the self, which is very subtle and unchanging, cannot be experienced. Just as a piece of fine silk cloth cannot be stitched with a heavy crowbar, or as the details of subtle object cannot be distinguished by the light of a lamp flame that flickers in the wind, but in the pure mind that has been rendered subtle and unmoving by the meditation described above, the self-bliss, that is Brahma, will become manifest. As without mind there cannot be experience, it is possible for the purified mind endowed with the extremely subtle mode vritti to experience the self-bliss by remaining in that form, that is in the form of Brahma. Then that one self is of the nature of Brahma will be clearly experienced. So I end this video here. The remaining portion I will give in the next video. Namaskar, dear friends. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe my channel. Please like, share, and thank you.